Hi, folks. Pastor Mike Spalding here with my good friend and big brother.
I'm Pastor Casper, and we're here together to encourage you to keep listening to Deception Detection Radio, because we're both on this network with our individual shows.
Yes,
and we're going to be doing some things together as well. Nudge, nudge, say no more.
Hey, folks, tune in Deception Detection Radio. Some of the best programming in Christian talk, news, encouragement, and Bible studies. God bless you.
God bless.
Walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for me. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe, trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the
Welcome to Shield of the Sun with Michael Herr.
Hello there. This video is entitled Dulce Base. Or in this particular video, we're going to talk about one of the most controversial military underground installations to have ever been built. Now, this particular base is joined with other top secret, classified, controversial bases as well. Places like Area 51, places that are seen in the South African desert, places buried in English towns, Pine Gap, many others. These particular bases were believed to have been functioning with the development of advanced technology, top secret classified operations, and co-partnership with beings outside of this world. So to get more understanding to this particular base we're going to be talking about, I've decided to compile some information regarding it. Some information that I thought would be very helpful for you to understand more of this parameter. So with that being stated, I'm going to go with some factual, testimonial information regarding certain people. And at the end of this video, as always, when it comes to this information, when it comes to the realities of things, you must always make up your own mind. So that being stated, here is the information. Dulce Base is believed to be a jointly operated human and demon, aka alien underground facility that exists upon the mesa of New Mexico, upon the line that borders Colorado. This area today is run and operated by the United States Air Force. The town of Dulce has 3,000 residents and is home to the Apache Reservation. The first major exposure of Dulce Base took place in the late 1970s when a man named Paul Benowitz, who was using at the time radio frequencies, began to intercept electronic communications from what he believed to be an alien spacecraft. Soon he received another series of communications from a location that he believed laid within installations outside of the city of Albuquerque. After some years of investigating his findings within the locations he became aware of, by the 1980s, Paul believed he discovered a secret underground base large enough to be its own city that was populated with humans and demons, aka the aliens. This place Paul identified as being Dulce Base, located upon the borders of New Mexico and Colorado. Paul, by the late 1980s, along with another noted investigator named John Lear, would also come to discover, stating in their words these following quotations. There is a UFO base in New Mexico, end quote. This is another quotation. Diabolical invaders from another solar system have set up a secret underground base in the rugged mountains of northern New Mexico so they can Shanghai human beings as guinea pigs for bizarre genetic experiments, end quote. In time, much of their research was suppressed by mainstream media, their sources becoming afraid and turning on them, and by other government means. At first, they made very good headway with their investigations, People were coming out, talking things of this sort, trying to bring awareness to this thing. Then suddenly, people started becoming threatened. They started to have strange things happen in their families. Horrible things were happening that were done in secret, and thus many of these sources turned on both Paul and John, leaving them with nothing. And by the end of the day, their information, however, was very important to look into, because they're not alone in this. One interesting statistic should be of note. Residents of the Dulce Base area from the 1960s to the 2010s, even on to this day, have seen multiple accounts of UFOs, alien beings, moving lights, and many unexplained supernatural events and sights in the area. There are even accounts of military firefights between them and what they call the aliens as well. Interesting to note. So this next series of events comes from a person known as Phil Schneider. So this another noted account was described by a man, as you know, to be Phil Schneider, and his testimony was indeed very startling. So this is what Phil had to state. Phil stated that he worked as a geological engineer for a government construction program known as DUMB, DUM. It's kind of interesting. DUM was a code name for Deep Underground Military Bases. Phil stated that this massive operation would build underneath the earth of the southwestern North American continent over 100 interconnecting subterranean tunnels that spanned across the continent of North America. These systems of tunnels connected with underground living and work bases large enough to be small towns and cities. These systems of tunnels connected with other existing bases as well. Dulce Base, according to Phil, is just one of these underground bases, but also a major connecting point to many. According to Phil, Dulce Base has 7 levels, each level doing various functions. These functions, according to Phil and even others, are co-jointly operated and done together, with human and alien involvements working back and forth. The following functions for these 7 levels are security and communication development, human and demon aka alien housing, laboratory experiments, mind control experiments, genetic experiments, and cryogenic storages, along with other forms of underground transportation and other experiments. The day that Phil Schneider quit working for Dulce Base happened when he was digging along with his men another tunnel system. Phil and his team were escorted by military Green Beret Special Forces. While digging, Phil and his team encountered technical difficulties with their drill when suddenly gray alien beings came upon the scene, confronting everyone. The Greys would attack the soldiers and men by releasing a heated burst of searing energy from their bodies. When the Greys began to do this, the soldiers opened fire, but it was useless, as 60 persons were killed in the encounter. Phil was badly burned, and later he quit. Phil, some years after, went on lectures telling of what he knew. Phil was sometime after found dead under very questionable means. Phil's death was in 1996. It was written off and believed to be a suicide, even though he had obvious bruises and a catheter cord that was tightly wrapped around his neck in a fashion that shows that someone strangled him with the cord while another person held him down. So there's basically evidence to the fact that someone took a cord, wrapped it around his neck, while another person held his legs together. And very viciously at that, he had bruises on his legs and bruises around his shoulders. So this is showing us that someone literally held him down while they strangled him, but they want to write it off as a suicide. Along with the information I just gave, Phil also stated that he came to know certain matters about the so-called aliens. They drink blood. Yeah, they drink blood. Yeah, these peaceful aliens from another galaxy, they need to drink your blood. Interesting. Phil recalled that the Greys would absorb blood from humans and animals through various frightful supernatural means. He also stated that within the gray housing section of Dulce Base, the beings have liquid-filled capsules of human DNA. This information of supernatural abilities, blood drinking, and human DNA manipulation shows the realities of the Greys and others like them to be what the Bible has always stated about them as being demons. The Bible describes this function of demons. One of them is they drink blood. They manipulate human DNA to create their own children and things of this sort. It's all in there. Just read it. Now, what's interesting is we're supposed to think that all of that is supposed to be a coincidence regarding them, when it's very clear they're not aliens. They're demons. And everything that's been happening underneath that base is pretty terrible indeed. In fact, there's more information. A noted exposure of Dulce Base was regarding events describing by a state trooper named Gabe Velardes. Trooper Velardes, in 1975, came across a mutilated cattle carcass in a field outside of Dulce Base. Inside the corpse of this animal, another fetus was discovered. So this trooper would find a dead animal cattle corpse, but inside that corpse was something else, another corpse. This fetus was described as not being human, nor an animal, but was some kind of thing that was a cross between a human, a monkey, and a frog. Not only that, the dead demonic being had no bones in its head and was full of water. Near the being, the trooper also saw an incubation chamber for what he believed could have been used for a cloned creature. After discovering the mess left behind by the inhabitants of Dulce Base, the trooper reported his findings. Soon after, Velardes' life was never the same again. He would often find recording devices in his home and would see sightings of various UFOs, military black helicopters, and began to learn information about bizarre biological experiments being done at Dulce Base. Much of his investigations were also suppressed. Interesting enough. So what we had with this particular trooper is that in the 70s, he finds a dead body, and he finds this dead body of being a demonic being, this hibernetic being. And it was inside the fetus of this cattle, and near it was this incubation chamber. This particular device he believed was large enough to fit a humanoid being. Basically, something happened at Dulce Base, and all the stuff got lying around here. No one knows how it ended up there. You could guess. Things don't always go so well there, but this is what took place. Now, other history of the Dulce Base is the following, as these events were described by a man named Thomas Costello, who stated he was a former base security officer for Dulce Base. And this is Thomas's testimony here. Thomas stated that Dulce Base was first constructed as part of a series of underground bases that were being constructed during the 1950s and 1960s. During the 1960s, a military operation disguised as a natural gas exploration called Operation Plowshare had went to the Mesa mountainous regions of New Mexico along the border of Colorado and cited the area as a place they would light off a subterranean nuclear blast that occurred many miles under the ground. According to Thomas, the military officials under the umbrella of Project Plowshare light off the nuke underground about 30 miles southwest of Dulce, right off US 64. The nuclear blast created an entrance for a hollowed-out area. This area would be developed as a substation for a series of tunnel systems attached to a number of level floors that goes downward. The plan was to build a base where humans and demons, aka aliens, work jointly. The human interest was to gain knowledge and advanced technology, and in exchange, the demons, aka aliens, would be allowed to carry out a multitude of experimentations on human beings. They would a lot of them be American citizens at that, by the way. Your government at work, everyone. These persons, according to Thomas, would be kidnapped victims, men, women, and children, and they would be used as lab rats for genetic experiments. Thomas also stated that along with these experiments, Dulce Base is also involved with atomic manipulation, cloning, studies of the human aura, advanced mind control technologies, animal-human crossbreeding, visual and audio wiretapping, and the list goes on. Thomas states that the place today is a vast underground city. Shocking enough. These are further information from Thomas here, and Thomas began working at the Dulce Base when he moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico during the 1970s. Thomas's job for the Dulce Base was to maintain and align video monitoring cameras throughout the underground complex and to escort visitors to their destination throughout the underground base. Thomas's experiences involving the humans who were kidnapped and held prisoner for alien genetic experiments is definitely one to truly put to your heart and consider. Thomas was told by his superiors that he was never to talk to them, and the U.S. government labeled these victims as mentally retarded or insane, when in fact they were not. And even if they were, it doesn't give you the right to experiment on them either. But it turned out many of them weren't, and that's what makes it even worse. In fact, it wouldn't even make it even worse either way. It's just worse all around that they do that. Here it goes. Thomas also became fully aware that his superiors fully knew that the experiments on the humans were inhumane, but instead of saying that, they coded the experiments as being for medical purposes. Thomas described meeting and seeing several demonic races, particularly the Greys and the Reptilians. As Thomas stated, he always would get a fearful, exhilarating feeling being around them. Thomas at first trusted what he was told about the aliens, but soon he started to see that the so-called aliens were not what he thought they were. Thomas would eventually see some of the horrifying genetic experiments and demonic creations where he saw men, women, and children being sedated or awake and being ripped apart, mutated, and turned into horrific creations from methods and actions that were so horrible that Thomas began to become uncomfortable with his job and would look away from the rooms and windows every time he passed by those levels because he did not want to see anymore. The so-called aliens were indeed evil, and the victims were treated by the government as if they were nothing to consider. Yeah, a government that's supposed to be looking out for them considered them as nothing to consider. I guess they weren't paying enough taxes, huh? Thomas stated that in time he began to break the rules of not speaking to the genetic experiment victims and began speaking to them. Thomas would learn the names of several of them and began to track where they come from when he got off work. Thomas learned how bad the government lied to him, as these victims who once had normal everyday lives left behind traumatized families who have been searching for their missing loved ones for years. That's horrible. It's real horrible. Thomas comes to realize that thousands of missing victims were locked inside Dulce Base. Thomas, after that, had to often hide his anger at work, often due to the telepathic abilities of the Greys who would scan the minds of Dulce Base employees. Thomas left the employment of Dulce Base soon after 1979. During 1978 to 1979, Thomas stated that the aliens on level 3, being the reptilians, turned against their human co-workers, and soon several military firefights between special forces and the reptilians take place. During the engagements, many soldiers were killed by heated blast, vaporization, and other horrible supernatural abilities of these demons. Their families were told lies regarding their deaths. For those 2 years, Dulce Base was under lockdown, and the Dulce War began, which saw horrifying encounters that did not end until a new deal was struck with the aliens. This would go on back and forth, back and forth. After the conflict ended, Thomas and the rest who took part in the Dulce War, the survivors, had to swear a code of silence. After Thomas left, he stole surveillance video and other evidence of Dulce Base. But over time, his work was ridiculed by mainstream media, suppressed by government agents. Sources turned against him. Thomas, since the time he began to expose events, lived in fear, moving from state to state, city to city, of being in fear of being assassinated by government agents. And also, many of the employees who also left with Thomas, many of them also ended up disappearing as well. Many of them cannot be found either. Their story and testimonies were very similar to what Thomas had to state. So what we have overall with Dulce Base is this. It is believed to be a military installation that is co-operated between humans and demons who they call the aliens. These particular demonic species are noted for being greys and reptilians. Other sources have stated seeing other species of demons there as well. So what's happening here? Would you like to know why the government is interested in covering up these matters? I mean, you would think by now, since so many people are learning so many things, they figure, you know what, let's just come out and tell you some things. Yeah, we found some other beings in the universe, and a lot of what the Bible talks about relates to them. A lot of what other people can see as being life in another universe, well, we know about that. Well, you know why they're not going to tell you about the things they know? Because they are guilty. And I mean guilty with a capital G. Very, very guilty. Much like the G in their Masonic temples. Very, very guilty. And you know what they're guilty of? You see, if you find out the truth, let's say the government tells you the truth of what they know. Finding out the truth in this manner, which is to say the public, the mainstream media, they all come out and start to tell you what the government has informed them about regarding this. See, many people already know the truth, but this is for people who are still stuck with their head in the sand. So if someone was to pull your head out of the sand and get you to see what's actually happening, what you'll also happen to realize is your government is guilty of literally allowing citizens of their own country and in other countries around the world, they're guilty of murder. They're guilty of experimenting on them. They committed inhumane crimes against them. They committed crimes against humanity by dealing with these beings. They took vast amounts of people, and they've been doing this for decades, since the 50s, since the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, it goes on. And throughout all those decades, they took all these people who ended up on the back of a milk box, and they were lying down inside that base, being fed to demons, being fed for their pleasure, so that their blood can fill up the whatever kind of low energy these beings were having. Human blood was given to these beings. Human bodies were given to these beings. Experiments were done on them. Experiments that cost them excruciating pain, that caused them misery, caused them to die slow, painful deaths. You see, people were missing their loved ones. They were going, where's my son? Where's my daughter? Where's my husband? Where's my wife? Where's my mom? Where's my dad? Where are all these people going? Just disappearing. And the government decided to let their employees know that these victims held in these doors and in these cages, they're nothing to consider. No, they're mentally retarded. We're doing them a favor. That's what they told their employees about these people. So these people who had a name to somebody, there was someone's son, there was someone's daughter, didn't matter to the government. They just used them, discarded them, and they let these demons eat them, absorb them, and experiment on them. And you know why all this was done? In the name of advanced technology. Of course, they wouldn't call it that. They'd say we did it in the name of freedom, protection, security, keeping everybody safe. How is that keeping people safe? How safe do you feel now that a government can lie to you like that? Take your tax dollars and build installations like that. Take cover-up policies so they can deal with beings like that. Beings who would make that kind of request. Beings who would state, yeah, we want human blood in human beings, and we want to experiment on them. You okay with that? The government's like, sure, we're okay with that. Do you need a place to stay? Yes, we do. We'll build it for you. Who's paying for it? The American people. They're going to pay for that, and then we're going to give them the American blood and the blood of all the people around the world. I mean, why not? I mean, you guys, we barely know who you are. We don't believe in the Bible. We don't consider the realities of that. So we'll just gamble it. We'll take a gamble, a 50-50 thing. Maybe this will work out. Maybe it won't. Who knows? Playing with your life is what the government was doing. Playing with the lives of everybody. Playing with everyone's life. They could care less how it affects you at the end of the day. And this is why it's important to start reading your Bible, getting closer to God, getting closer to the truth, because you cannot depend on a government to tell you the truth. Even if they come out and admit to you that they've been dealing with demonic beings they want to call aliens, they're going to sell you the alien fodder. They're going to cover up the murders, the atrocities, the experiments, the crimes against humanity that they committed. They're going to cover all of that up. They're not going to own up to that. In fact, if they could just simply blame the aliens, that's what they'll do. You know, it doesn't matter, you know. And the aliens are making sure that your human government rulers are just as guilty as they are. Because you know what hell is all about? Taking everyone down with them. Consider what I'm saying. Join me in a prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, I pray, Lord, for deliverance for all demonic beings. Break every curse, break every spell, break every kind of demonic influence and demonic policies that is being seen from the first to the last. Rebuke the demons that are being held down in these bases. Rebuke their power, rebuke their efforts. I pray, Lord God Almighty, for your intervention on all of these matters to rescue human targets who are being targeted for abductions, gang stalking, and other occult activity. Rebuke the sellouts from the first to the last who would hand over their family members due to the atrociousness of their own sins. Forgive us of our sins as we forgive those who have sinned against us, and may not any of these curses or activities fall upon us, but deliver us from evil. In Jesus Christ's name, amen. If you'd like to donate to Shield of the Sun, please go to www.gofundme.com. There you will find a page called Michael Herr Books and Education. Please donate to this ministry as it only continues with your support. You can click the link below in the description box, which will take you there directly, or you can send me something in the mail, where the address also is in the description box below if you cannot use this website. I want to say God bless you, and I will see you soon.
From London to Taiwan, I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul.